Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second session in our Jumpstart 2018 series. My name's Sammy Morja. I'm Head of Coaching and Project Innovation here at Crowdfunder, and I'm broadcasting live today from the boardroom in Crowdfunder HQ, where it's actually just started tipping it down with rain outside. I know there's some hairy weather further up country as well, so I hope everyone's huddled inside and surviving that. We're also really lucky to be joined today by Max from Tap Social Movement. And Max is going to be sharing his experiences after raising money on Crowdfunder last year. And he's going to be telling us a bit about how he sort of went about creating the perfect page and hopefully passing on some useful tips to everyone as well. So just a quick recap of where we are today. We're on the second session all about creating the perfect page. In the last session, if you missed that, we go into a lot of detail on planning your project and getting your ideas straight. And in the final session next week, we'll be really drilling into the strategy behind launching a project and how to spread the word, how to get it out there. So that'll be the next session. So I'm going to come over to you just to get the ball rolling, first of all, Max, and ask if you can tell us a little bit about your project, Tap Social Movement, and what it is you set out to achieve.
So we're Tap Social. We're a craft brewery and community space based in Oxford, and our predominant aim is to help people currently serving prison sentences or recently released get back into employment. So we provide training and work placements for these guys. We set out to achieve £30,000 before Christmas. And that was to sort of do a number of things, sort of ultimately raise awareness of our employment program and what we do, but also to do some sort of much needed tap room renovations, in putting in heating and upgrading the toilets so more people could come to our space, and also to expand the brewery. We got to peak capacity. We couldn't really make any more beer and fulfill the demand. We were crowdfunding to raise more money to put some more tanks in, and that all goes back to being able to, if we sell more beer, if we make more beer, we can employ more people through our program from the prison.
Amazing. I think any social enterprise which involves beer is always fine by me. So well done you guys on successfully reaching your target as well. And I've been having a look on your social media. I can see you've been up to all sorts over Christmas. So it looks like everything's going well. So we're going to keep coming back to Max throughout the session today, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about that. So just to quickly point out, for those of you who haven't yet found these, haven't spotted them and brought them into your lives, we have 3 packs that go alongside these sessions, one on each of the stages. So do make sure you've got your copy of the Creating Your Project Guide. It's about 10 pages long. It's super useful and full of checklists, templates, things that you can use throughout the process of creating your project. And there's also lots of really great examples in there. Obviously, we're going to talk about Max's project today, but there's lots of others in there. I think one of the best ways to learn is by example, is by looking at what other people have done, maybe what you liked, what you didn't like so much, and learning from that. So do make sure you check those ones out. So today, we're talking all about creating your project. So first thing, when you get onto the Crowdfunder website and you click Start Crowdfunding. So this is what it looks like. This is a little peek into where you'll start to add all of those details. So you can see across the top there, we break it down into these 6 different pages where you put in the information about your project. So it's pretty formulaic. You don't need to know anything about coding websites. It's pretty simple. You just kind of pop in the information, and if you have any questions along the way, you can see those little orange circles with an eye in. If you hover over those or click those, it will tell you some more information about what it is that we're after and offer up some tips as well. And you can see there on the right hand side under the big heading Top Tips, we've got links to those guides again, so you really can't avoid them. They're everywhere for you. So how do you tell your story when you're crowdfunding? This is a question that I think a lot of people ask when they come in and start thinking about pulling together their pages. How do I talk about what I'm doing? How do I present it in a way that's engaging, that's easy to read, but also that's relevant for my audience? And that's, of course, why in that first session we really did a lot of work on thinking about who your audience is because that's going to be really crucial when you're thinking about how you tell your story. So my star students here, of course, Tap Social Movement, let's have a look at their opening paragraph from their project page. And I've screenshotted this, so I hope it's nice and clear for everyone. So here in this opening paragraph is made it really clear that if I know nothing else, if I read nothing else, if I don't speak to anyone at Tap Social, I've never heard of them before, I know exactly what they're all about. And they've even done the handy thing of putting things in bold for me. So I know straight where the interesting and juicy bits are, which is a trick which I definitely use myself when I'm writing really long emails and I want to make sure people read the important bit, for example. So really sort of used formatting there to kind of drill it home right in that opening sentence what they're all about. So Max, tell us then, how did you approach this task of telling your story on your Crowdfunder page?
Yeah, so when telling our story, we felt there were three sort of key things we wanted to get across. Firstly, like you mentioned, we wanted people to know who Tap Social Movement is and what we're about, so being a craft brewery and the work we do with the criminal justice system. Then we wanted to obviously talk about or raise awareness of the problem that we're trying to solve, and that be the high reoffending rates of ex-prisoners due to unemployment. And then sort of, again, on top of that, the sort of overarching thing, I guess, was what our project is. And we wanted people to really know that we're trying to do the brewery expansion and tap room renovations. Also, we could fulfill this problem that we're trying to solve of raising awareness about reoffending rates.
Fantastic, and that actually leads really nicely onto what I was about to talk about next. So I think this is totally crucial that Max has just picked out, is the question to answer sort of first up. What problem does your project solve? And actually being really clear in that in your own heads right from the get-go, so that when you're approaching this task of telling your story, that's something that's right there at the front, is what problem is your project solving. It kind of gives it purpose, it gives it meaning, and kind of tackles that question right head on. So let's have a look at a little section that I again clipped out from the page, which talks about the social justice mission behind Tap Social Movement. So we've got some nice stats in there. We're referencing, you know, where those stats have come from. That really gives context to this project. It tells us that this is something which is an issue, and then obviously these guys go on to talk about how they're solving it. Now, if you head to the guide on creating your project that I mentioned just a moment ago, you'll find in there we've actually got a template, almost like a formula of things to make sure that you think about when you're writing your description. So I definitely recommend working your way through those. And over these next couple of slides, we're going to touch on kind of what some of those might be and why you need to make sure that you're thinking about them. So these three key points, I would say, if you're going to keep everything really simple and you know, go for a really basic description, no matter what, you need to make sure that you're hitting these three key points. So what is it that you're trying to achieve? What's the point? Why are we here? Why are we raising this money? And what is it that makes your project great? We can spot that great for lots of different words, completely depending on what your project is. What makes it unique? What makes it exciting, innovative, different? All of those different words that we might use instead of great. Great is kind of a coverall, if you like. What is it? What's that magic ingredient that you have that makes people go, oh, that's interesting? What's that thing? And finally, you know, who you are and what's your experience. Really key, not only in giving context again to the project, but actually a bit of credibility in saying, you know, we know we know our stuff, we know what we're about, and we know why this is the right way to be going, about things. And actually, it really helps with adding a bit of personality to the project as well. People want to know who it is they're giving money to, who are these people that are making these great things happen. So don't be afraid to show your faces, so to speak. So having a look again, just a way that these guys sort of tapped into this. In answering kind of those questions, what is it that they're about? What are they trying to achieve? So looking at ways to reduce the staggering reoffending rates. So really simple, straight up there. So it's also good to think about how you talk about your journey in your description. And I use the word journey because it's definitely something that you're still on, the fact that you're crowdfunding. So we can look at the past, we can look at the present, and we can look at the future as well. That's all sort of part of it. And I think the difference with crowdfunding compared to maybe if you were just marketing a product, for example, is that people expect to be that bit much closer to you as an organization or as a business. They kind of want to peek behind the curtain. They want to know what goes on behind the scenes because they're becoming part of a team by becoming a supporter. So where did your idea come from? How did this all come about? What decided, what was it that made you decide to make this happen? What was that kind of spark or that thing that really pushed this to happen? And what does the future hold? Obviously, we're looking to raise some money right now. What is that going to take you in the future? And don't be afraid to be ambitious and to really sort of put forward actually what your hopes and your dreams are for the project. So again, looking at how these guys sort of tackled some of that. Again, I love that they've highlighted stuff in bold. I think it works really well for me personally when I see text in bold. Really key, increase their brewing capacity, more employees, more impact. If you read nothing else, you've got that. You know what they're all about here on this journey. And the details, don't forget the details. So how is the money being spent? So hopefully you're not using it to fly off to Antigua and whatever and take all your employees on a holiday. Actually, there's a bit more to it while you're crowdfunding for this money. You're going to do something useful for it. So is it that you're going to buy a piece of equipment? Is it that going to pay to employ a member of staff? What is it that it's going to be spent on? And you can do something quite visual with that. You can make it a pie chart or something. We're not looking for pounds and pence here. You don't need to be really, really exact and give people a shopping list breakdown. Just give them an idea of it. It's also a really good idea to highlight your rewards in your description, particularly if you've got a few really cool ones or really key ones that you think, actually, it's quite good if I talk about this in a bit more depth. Do make sure that you do that. And also answering any questions that you think are really obvious that people might want to know. I think that's, again, something that you can tackle right there in your description. So a great example again of talking about your rewards and definitely bigging them up with a fantastic title art, super amazing rewards. And also, a little FYI on there, which is almost, I guess, sort of an FAQ, is saying, everyone who pledges will have this benefit as well. So obviously that's text. That's a lot of text that we've been looking at just there. Something which is really important is thinking about how you can add visual texture. I love that term, visual texture. And what I mean by that is, how do you make the page look good? How do you make it feel good? So it's more than just writing. I think it's, people know these days that if you present people with just blocks of text, they're probably not just going to read it all. We want people to look at your page and to be able to tell what you're all about just by looking at the pictures. So we'll have a look at Tap Social's page in just a moment and kind of see their images. And you can tell straight away what they're all about. So how do we take it from a blank white sheet with text to something a bit more jazzy? So there's a few things that you can include, and you can do this all in the description editor on the site. So adding in images, you can even include a map of where you are, pictures of your team, for example, pictures of your venue or of your products, testimonials from people who are already involved with your project, definitely using those headings to break things up. And if you do have, data or things that are quite sort of numbery and not necessarily something that reads really well when it's just written down, feel free to, pop in some infographics and that kind of thing. So Max, from your perspective, and we're having a little peek at your page here, we can see it's pretty visual. How important do you think it is to include visual content?
Yeah, I think it's super important to have visual content, especially the video. It's sort of the first thing that backers will see, and if you have a good video or capture their attention straight away, whether it's through the video or the pictures on site, they're more likely to then continue and read the story that you've written. I think another thing that's sort of really important in terms of visual content is getting your sort of your homepage project picture right. So the picture that I see, if they're just sort of scrolling the Crowdfunder site, if they see that and it's really capturing, that will make them go through to your page in the first place. So I think that's important to get right as well. Also, I think it's important to have sort of photos and images of yourself or your team, because I think people really buy into you as the human, and they know you're not just a company or a robot. And if they can see you a lot on the page, I think they're more likely to get involved and be engaged with your project.
Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right there about the personality thing and not being a robot. I know that people sometimes think that I'm a robot because they get emails from me sometimes, but I am a real human, I promise, as are, you know, all of our project owners as well. So definitely have a look at CAP Social Movement's page, and I'll include a link actually at the end so you can have a look at that. And if you're on the live chat there, then I know that some of my colleagues will put a link in so you can have a look at that page. And as I say, there's lots of great examples online, so do, you know, have a look through those. So Max mentioned video, and I think it's quite important to, you know, sort of address this question. People are sometimes a bit afraid of a video. What's the point? Why do I have to do one? Do I have to do one? I get asked that a lot. You don't have to. It's not mandatory, is the first thing I'll say. You can put a project live on Crowdfunder. It's physically possible to put a project live on Crowdfunder without a video, but we do recommend that you have one for all of those reasons that Max has just mentioned. And actually, for anyone that's kind of online these days, I think you'll have noticed the huge upward trend in video content on things like social media. I was having a look at some stats earlier on in the week, and I know that YouTube see 100% increase in video watches year on year. And actually, the scales are now tipping that more views are happening on platforms like Facebook than YouTube, which is kind of video only. So it really does sort of go to show that having a video in your arsenal of content is a real powerhouse tool. It's something that's really worthwhile doing. So some key tips on making a video. Oh, bear with me. Some key tips on making a video. First thing I would say is don't put too much pressure on yourselves to do it in kind of one take and think it's going to be really perfect and really professional. It doesn't have to be. As I say, you're real people, you're, you know, real organisation. So don't worry about it having to be sort of a Spielberg production with lasers and aliens and special effects. It doesn't need any of that. Let's keep it really simple. So keep it short. 2 minutes is really what we'd recommend to be a maximum. The reason being is that people just don't watch really long videos to the end. If you feel it's absolutely essential to have a longer video, you know, that's fine, but make sure that your really key stuff is at the start, and almost be sort of accepting of the fact that not everyone will watch it to the end. And actually, people say that the first 30 seconds is really key. So you need to make sure that your message comes across really quickly, get straight in there, straight to the point. Do get yourselves on camera if you can at all bring yourselves to do that. Try not to shy away. If you think, actually, I'm really nervous, I'm not the right person to be on camera, but maybe one of your colleagues or someone else who's helping out with the project is happy to do it, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure you get some real people on there. It's much better to have that than sort of, you know, a slideshow type thing. And don't worry about over-scripting it. Just write down some key points to guide you through. Roll with it, see what comes out, keep the camera going, and eventually you'll have something which you think, yeah, that's all right, I'll go with that. And Max, your video's awesome. I think anyone who's watched your video would definitely agree. What do you think are the most important things to make sure you're including in a video?
Well, thank you. So firstly, we have had a friend who was experienced in making videos, so we were quite fortunate in that way. But I don't think you need to have that. I think you can do a perfectly good video. on your mobile phone these days. So I think that's the first thing to know. I think reiterating what you said about keeping it concise and simple. I think viewers get easily distracted, and they have so much content online now that they'll turn away. So you kind of like need to get your point across within the first 30 seconds to a minute. Grab their attention straight away, I think. Something that we did is we used some statistics, that sort of like eye-opening statistics that highlighted the problem we're trying to resolve at the start. And so that sort of captures people's attention. And then we introduce ourselves. We've got a lot of content with our faces in the video. I mean, some of the guys weren't so keen on that, but we thought it was quite important. Like going back to that being human, people relate to human beings, and just like getting in there and yeah, just being personal. And something in terms of the length, we struggled to really cut our video down. Don't be afraid to sort of cut parts out of your video and put them in the story itself and the content lower down in the page. We actually put some really great testimonials from some of the guys from the prison page in the video. So not everything needs to be in that first video. You can put it elsewhere in your project page. It's important parts, and keep it short and simple, and yeah, grab people's attention.
Perfect. And I think you made a really good point there as well about actually using that video content elsewhere. As you said, you can embed videos lower down, so you can have some text, some image, some video, so you can add in maybe little snippets. And of course, you can use those snippets on things like social media as well, on Facebook, for example. You can just grab little 30-second bits or even 10-second bits and use those, you know, to sort of spread the word. A couple of key things to look out for with videos, and I see this happen time and time again. So two things to check you avoid, mistakes to sort of avoid when you're making a video. First one, sound quality. It may seem like a really nice idea to record a video on the beach or in the middle of the town, but I promise you, if no one can hear what you're saying, it will be a total waste of time. So please, don't do it. It breaks my heart every time I see it. Make sure that you're somewhere really quiet where people can hear what you're saying. The second one is, as Max mentioned, a lot of people make their videos on their phones, and actually phone cameras are so good now that that's perfectly fine. It's probably just as good as any other camera. Do make sure you hold your phone that way, not that way, because the window, the box which your video will appear, is that way. So if you make your video that way, you'll have a little slither with a big gap either side, and it'll look a bit weird and odd. So two top things that I see all the time. Okay, so let's talk about rewards. How can you use rewards to motivate your crowd? And I think that's really key. That's what rewards are about. It's about motivating your crowd to support your project, to share your project, to get excited about your project and be a part of it. So we're always going back to thinking about who those people are in your crowd. And we, you know, talked about that a lot in the first session about identifying those people. So you should, if you've done your homework, have a really good idea about who those people are by now. And if you remember that diagram that we looked at in the last session, where we talked about the reasons why people support projects. So because they really believe in your idea, and because they really want the reward, and about how there's that overlap. Now, if you have a clear idea about why your crowd are motivated for your project, again, that will start to tell you about what kind of rewards are really going to be the best ones for you. So I've kind of identified, let's say, 4 main groups. And there are others, and you can split these in different ways, but I think it's useful maybe we can just get it down to 4 first of all. So products and services, kind of stuff that you can give people. So whether that's an item or whether that's a service, something that you can offer. Often that's stuff that people already have or already offering. So you'll need to look at ways to kind of make them a little bit more interesting. We'll talk about that in a moment. But it might be something that you're not already offering. It might be something totally unique. Similarly with experiences and events. Often they're things that are totally out of the ordinary. So an invitation to a party, an opportunity to come and see behind the scenes of something or learn about something. Similarly with sponsorship and memberships, they're kind of longer term opportunities to really build that relationship with a backer. And that's something that we see people do a lot. And finally, just thank yous in sort of many, many different guises. So 7 reward tips, and 7 is a bit of an odd number. And you'll see that number 7 on my 7 reward tips is odd numbers. And that's precisely for that reason. So don't feel that you need to stick to round numbers when you're offering rewards. So I'm going to sort of go backwards here. Something that's priced for £12, I think makes just as much sense as something that's priced for £10. If that's what your reward is worth, if that's the number that works. And actually there's a bit of research that says that odd numbers, people warm to them a bit more in terms of pricing, because it feels like you've worked the price out. So if you're offering something for £10 or for £12, it feels like £12 is the real price, because that that must have been calculated to come up with that kind of odd number. So when you're working out what you think your rewards are worth, don't feel like you have to stick to 5 and 10s. You can sort of go away from that. Make sure you've got a nice range of rewards across the price points. So right the way down from maybe £5 or £10, right the way up to maybe 10% of your target, or even bigger. And the £20 pledge is a really important one. And that's because that's where we see a really good chunk of pledges come in, actually, is around that £20 mark. It's kind of one note, you can take it out of your wallet and you can feel it, and you think £20, that's it's not too much money. It's not too much of a commitment, but it's a really good chunk of money in the bank for you as a project owner. So make sure you've got something really strong for £20. Now, numbers sort of 2 and 4, offering things that are very authentic or exclusive, we know works really well in crowdfunding, something that's only available here. And you can add authenticity to rewards by things like, for example, signing things, or giving people a chance to actually be involved with your organisation or business in some way. So, let's say you get a signed copy of a book, or let's say you get, the first edition, or the first brewing, of a new beer, or something like that, something which is very real. Offering early bird opportunities can work really well, and you can limit how many you have available of each reward on Crowdfunder. So if, for example, you wanted to offer a limited number, let's say 10 of a certain reward at £10, and then after that it'll be £15, you can do that on Crowdfunder. So, I think that the people who do it really well is when you're selling tickets for festivals or for events, you'll always see an early bird ticket sale there, and that's because it works quite well. It gets people motivated at the start, and we'll talk about in that next session why getting people motivated and interested at the start is so important. And finally, and actually I'd say almost most importantly, which is why it's number 1, is making sure that your rewards are good value for money. So there can be a bit of almost this idea that because people are pledging through a crowdfunder project, that they'll be willing to pay more than usual for a product, which actually isn't necessarily always the case. It depends on where your supporters fall on that diagram between why they're supporting the project, because they're really invested in the idea, or because they want the reward. Now, those of you on that side, the reward side, it's even more crucial that your rewards need to be really good value. For those of you who think, actually, my supporters are supporting me no matter what, doesn't matter about the reward, you might be able to get away with some higher prices. But I would always, and this goes for every aspect of your crowdfunder page, make sure that you're speaking to your crowd. Ask people, get their opinions and see what they say. So let's have a look at some that Tap Social put together. I picked out a few of my favourites, 4 of my favourites. So the £25 reward I know is a really good seller, the criminally good beer, where you get some actual bottles of beer. I mean, who could argue with that? I think really, really simple. And they've been really clear here and said it's collection only, but you can have a pint in the tap room when you come by as well, which I think is a nice little sweetener in the deal. They have this membership option. for £50, where you become a member, and that includes a discount along with some other goodies. And they've added some fun to the rewards and things like, you know, a high five from one of the team. That kind of thing, I think, really adds, you know, personality. You can do that throughout your page as well, you know, in your rewards. I really love this £100 one, behind the scenes, where you get to go and have a tour of the brewery and also sort of taste the beers. So things like that, for someone who works in a brewery, you might think that's not super exciting. Why would anyone be interested in that? But those kind of experiences that people just wouldn't be able to access usually work really well as rewards. And they're a great way to build those relationships with those supporters as well and really cement them as customers. And the really punchy reward, the top one, the £5,000 reward. And actually, I know that 2 of these were sort of pledged on. I think it was by one company. So I think they were having one potentially really massive party. I'm sure you can tell us more about that. Where actually they'll, you know, throw a bespoke private party in the tap room with an open bar, which sounds absolutely outrageous, which sounds amazing. And obviously, you know, you managed to shift that one as well. So Max, can you tell us a bit about how you came up with your rewards and how you sort of approached it all?
Yeah, so firstly, like you mentioned before, we wanted to have values that represented value to the backers. We knew that not only, we sort of played on the point that not only would they be helping a good cause, they'd be getting something awesome in return. And we played on the fact that it was coming up to Christmas, people buying gifts, awesome rewards, as well as doing a good deed at the same time. We wanted to do rewards or have a range of rewards that got people coming back to the tap room, because fundamentally £25 is great, but something like the membership, if it means that they keep coming back to make the most of that 10% discount, they're getting their friends to come down to our space. And also the fact, sort of like giving a pint on collection gets them to come down, so they might stay for longer. It sort of works well for everyone. We wanted obviously that range of rewards that was suitable for everyone, like you mentioned. So we had sort of low scale rewards from merchandise to beers, up to those more experiences sort of rewards, sort of like days with our brewer or brewery tours. And then we wanted to have a range of sort of like really big ones, which we could sort of target companies and corporate clients. And so we were really fortunate to be able to sell one of them. And if you can sell one of those bigger rewards, it really does make a big difference to your end goal. So I really recommend sort of pushing some of them as well. One thing I would say though is make sure that you can fulfill all these rewards. Don't get carried away with all these amazing rewards that sound amazing value, and then at the end of it, you've made your crowdfunder goal, but actually you've not actually come away with anything, and or you can't actually financially fulfill it. So make sure you can do what you're saying you're going to give.
Absolutely, that is really, really crucial advice. Is do make sure that you're realistic in delivering your rewards, that actually it's going to be in budget and that you've accounted for that when you're setting the prices of your rewards and also your target. Now, I'll mention again at this stage, for anyone who's not aware, is that you don't actually need to add rewards. Of course, we find that those projects that do have rewards tend to raise more money and their average pledge tends to be higher. But on every single project page, you'll see this little box where people can just choose to donate some money. So they can just put in, and they can actually type in any amount in that row at the top there. So you don't have to have rewards there, they're not mandatory. Now, the next big question that I get asked all the time is, what's the right target for my project? How much do you think I'm going to raise? And of course, I don't always bring my crystal ball with me. So it's not necessarily the easiest question to answer without actually knowing enough about your project. So I normally throw it back to that project owner and say, well, what do you think is the right target? And actually, we have some stats that you can use. And these, again, are detailed in that booklet, so I'm not going to go into them in too much depth now, but we have some numbers that you can use to work out what might be a good target. So you can take the average pledge, work out how many people you'll need to view your page in order to maybe get a pledge from 1 in 20 of them, take into account fees and any costs for rewards, and hopefully with a little bit of calculation, you should have a bit of an idea of what might be realistic. So you cross-check that with your network map that we drew in that first session. So let's say at the end you say, okay, in order to reach my target, I need to get 200 people to pledge. You look at your network map and say, does that seem realistic based on my network map? Yeah, easy. I can do that. I've definitely got 200 people. Great, that's fantastic. Actually, if you do look at your network map and say, that number seems a bit high, then again, it might be that you'll need to work on expanding that crowd, or maybe looking at adjusting your target slightly. So definitely kind of look at those two together. And we do have two options on crowdfunding. You can choose when you're setting up your project. You can go on all or nothing, which does what it says on the tin. You have to reach that target in order to keep the money. Otherwise, it's all returned to the backers. You're not charged anything, there's no fee, but you won't actually receive any of that money. The other option is flexible funding, or keep what you raise. Again, does what it says on the tin. No matter how much you raise, even if you don't hit your target, you get to keep everything. And we do have stretch targets as well. So don't think that that first target that you set is the absolute maximum you'll be able to raise. It doesn't work like that at all. More think about that as your first milestone. That's kind of what we really need just to get this thing going. Once you've raised that amount, then you can start to add stretch targets and you can keep people motivated. And there's just an example here of a project that's live at the moment. You can see that sort of orange bit, that's their stretch target. And actually, Tap Social Movement, they hit their target and went over it as well. So Max, before you guys went live, how confident were you that you were going to hit your target in the 4 weeks?
So we were quite fortunate, because we already had the tap room and community space set up for just over, well, just nearly a year. We'd already started to build that community. We had quite a big sort of, a lot of followers on Facebook and Instagram. So we sort of gauged an idea of how many people might pledge. I mean, you never really expect it to be as many as it is, but we had a sort of an idea. So we were quite confident to start off with. Like with the rewards, we sort of we calculated them to see if the rewards would make that, and we made sure it went well over, so that even if we didn't sell all the rewards, we would make the target. But I think sort of when it goes live, when the project went live, you will have this sort of huge sort of peak of pledges, and we actually looked at ours and on the dashboard behind the scenes, and it said we were going to hit our target by about 500%. That will drop very quickly. About halfway through, we started to panic, thinking we're never going to make this. But keep the faith, with a bit of promotion and some of our larger rewards come through. We did hit the target, and then at the end, we saw another influx of pledges. So people seem to wait till the last moment to pledge. So keep faith, keep the confidence in there, and you'll be fine, I think.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And actually, the next session that we're running next week, Max, is entirely on what happens once the project goes live. And you've absolutely stolen the punchline. Is there's loads at the start and there's loads at the end, and we see that every time. So if you're watching this and thinking, okay, what does that mean? How do I make the most of that? It's absolutely vital that you tune in next week, where we're going to go through strategy and how you make the most of the way that crowdfunding sort of normally works. So to finish us off then, Max, finally, the hardest question in crowdfunding, what is your one best piece of advice for anyone who's creating their project at the moment?
Well, it was quite a difficult one. I think the most important thing is to put the effort in if you want to see the results. We sort of realized that running a crowdfunding campaign is like a full-time job. So you make that plan and follow it through. Creating the perfect crowdfunder page is one of the most important aspects. If you get that right pre-launch, bar a bit of promotion, like I said, it's kind of plain sailing from there. So if you create the excellent page with the perfect video, you'll be well on your way. I think with that, make sure that you're really clear in what you're trying to say. Going back to that point of make sure people know within the first paragraph of your page, or within the first 30 seconds of your video who you are and what you're setting out to achieve. Sort of people lose interest quickly, so it's important to grab their attention, tell an interesting story. And then another one, maybe sort of just check other campaigns similar to yours. I know it sounds cheeky, but look at other projects. People have been there and done it before. See what works well for them. See which rewards performed well. You could probably tweak them a little bit and make them the perfect reward for yourselves. Just be human, be yourself, and yeah, because that's what people buy into.
Amazing. Thanks so much. So before next week, the final session, I've got some more homework for everyone. So first one, draft your project description. So start having a go. It only needs to be a rough draft. Just get some points down. Also, have a go at brainstorming some reward ideas. And finally, see if you can work out what your best target might be. And then we'll pick it up next week and moving from there. So if you do have any questions at all, anything that we've talked about today or anything that we haven't spoken about, and you can get in touch with us a couple of ways. So you can always tweet us. We're at Crowdfunder UK, and the team will be able to answer any sort of quick questions on there. Or you can pop us an email, and that's support@crowdfunder.co.uk. If you've got anything longer or anything more specific about your project that you wouldn't necessarily want to put out on Twitter, then you can do that there as well. So I will say a huge thank you to Max for joining us. I think it's been absolutely incredible to have you here, and I'm sure everyone watching will agree as well. There's been some fantastic advice, and we'll absolutely hope to see you crowdfunding again soon. So thanks so much for joining us. I'll see you all next week. Thanks, bye.